The Israelites had suffered for 40 years under the cruel rule of the Philistines. Their cries for deliverance filled the heavens, and Yahuwah chose a child to bring freedom. In the town of Zorah, a woman was barren, unable to bear children. But one day, the angel of Yah appeared to her. "You will conceive and bear a son," the angel declared. "He shall be a Nazarite, set apart for Abba Yah. No razor shall touch his head, and through him, Israel will begin to be delivered from its enemies." Amazed, she ran to tell her husband Manoah. Overwhelmed, he prayed, "Abba Yah, let your messenger return to teach us how to raise this child." The angel came again, confirming the divine instructions. In time, she bore a son and named him Samson. As he grew, Yahuwah's spirit stirred within him, but with great strength came great trials, temptation, betrayal, and a destiny unlike any other. Would Samson fulfill his divine purpose, or would his own desires lead him to ruin? This was the beginning of the strongest man in history. Years passed, and Samson grew into a mighty warrior, blessed with strength beyond human limits. But his heart, restless and bold, often led him into danger. One day he traveled to Timnah, a Philistine city, and saw a woman who captivated him, a Philistine, an enemy, yet he desired her. Returning home, he declared,
"I've seen a woman in Timnah. Get her for me as my wife."
His parents were shocked. "Must you marry a Philistine? Are there not women among our own people?" But Samson insisted.
"She's right in my eyes."
Unbeknownst to them, this was part of Yahuwah's plan to create conflict with the Philistines. As Samson journeyed back to Timnah, a young lion attacked him, roaring in fury. Without a weapon, Samson fought. The spirit of Yah filled him with supernatural strength, and with his bare hands he tore the beast apart like a young goat. He told no one. Later, when he returned, he found bees had made honey inside the lion's carcass. He ate and shared it, but told no one of its origins. Samson was strong, but his desires and secrets would soon bring his downfall. Samson's wedding feast in Timnah was grand, filled with laughter and wine. The Philistines, eager to celebrate, surrounded him, but Samson had a challenge. "Let me tell you a riddle," he said, smirking. "If you solve it in 7 days, I'll give you 30 fine garments, but if you fail, you must give me 30 garments instead." The Philistines, confident, agreed.
Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet.
For 3 days they puzzled but found no answer. Frustration turned into desperation. On the 4th day, they cornered Samson's bride. "Coax your husband into telling you, or we will burn your father's house." Terrified, she wept before Samson, pleading, "You do not love me. You have given my people a riddle but won't tell me the answer." For 7 days she cried, until Samson, weary, whispered the secret to her. That evening the Philistines approached Samson, smirking. "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" Samson's eyes darkened. He had been betrayed. "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." Revenge was coming. Betrayal burned inside Samson like a raging fire. His wife had deceived him. The Philistines had stolen his riddle. They had mocked him. But Samson was not a man to be mocked. Vengeance was coming. Fueled by fury, he stormed to Ashkelon, a Philistine city, and struck down 30 men. He tore their garments from their lifeless bodies and returned to the wedding feast. Without a word, he threw the stolen garments at the feet of those who had tricked him. Then, still burning with rage, he left his bride and returned to his father's house. But when Samson's wrath had cooled and he returned for his wife, he found her given to another. Her father stood before him, trembling. "I thought you hated her," the man stammered, "so I gave her to your companion. Take her younger sister instead." Something inside Samson snapped. "This time I will truly harm the Philistines." That night, he captured 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs and set torches between them. With a roar of fury, he released them into the Philistine fields. The golden wheat burned. The vineyards turned to ash. The olive groves were devoured by fire. Samson had set the land of the Philistines ablaze. And now they wanted his blood. The Philistines watched in horror as their fields, vineyards, and olive groves burned to the ground. Smoke filled the sky, their livelihoods reduced to ashes. "Who did this?" they demanded. A trembling voice answered, "Samson." the Timnite's son-in-law, because his wife was given to another. Vengeance breeds vengeance. In blind rage, the Philistines stormed into Timnah. They dragged Samson's wife and her father from their home and set them on fire. When word reached him, Samson's blood boiled. "Since you have acted like this, I swear, I will not stop until I have my revenge on you." Samson attacked with fury, striking down countless Philistines. He fought with his bare hands, crushing their warriors one by one. Their bodies littered the ground, their blood soaking the earth. When the battle ended, Samson disappeared into the wilderness, taking refuge in the cave of Etam. But the Philistines would not forget. They gathered their armies, preparing to hunt him down. And this time, it would not be the Philistines who betrayed Samson. It would be his own people. Samson was a hunted man. The Philistines, thirsty for vengeance, gathered their armies and marched into Judah, spreading fear among the Israelites. The men of Judah trembled in fear, asking, "Why have you come against us?" "We have come to capture Samson, to do to him what he did to us." Fear gripped the Israelites. Rather than stand with their strongest warrior, they chose to betray him. 3,000 men from Judah went to the cave of Etam, where Samson was hiding. "Samson, don't you see? The Philistines rule over us. You have brought this upon us. We have come to hand you over." Samson's voice was calm, his power restrained.
"Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves."
"We will not kill you. We will only bind you and hand you over." They tied him with new ropes and led him to the waiting Philistine army. As the Philistines saw Samson bound, their laughter rang through the valley. Then, the spirit of Yahuwah came upon Samson. The ropes binding him snapped like burned threads. His eyes scanned the battlefield. No sword, no spear, only a fresh jawbone of a donkey lying in the dust. He seized it, and with a single strike the slaughter began. One Philistine fell, then another, then another. Samson moved like a storm, striking down every enemy in his path. 100 men fell, then 200, then 500. By the time his arm finally lowered, 1,000 warriors lay dead around him. Breathless, drenched in blood, Samson lifted the jawbone high and declared, "With a donkey's jawbone I have made donkeys of them. With a donkey's jawbone I have slain 1,000 men." One man against an army, and the army had lost. But Samson's strength had drained him. Thirst gripped him. "Yahuwah, you have given me this great victory. Will I now die of thirst?" And Yah answered. From the very ground water burst forth. Samson drank, and his strength was restored. But the Philistines had not given up. They had failed with swords and spears. Now they would try with something far more dangerous. The embrace of a woman. Her name was Delilah. The Philistines had learned a painful lesson. Samson could not be defeated by strength alone. Armies had fallen before him, their warriors crushed like dust. If they could not break his body, they would break his heart, and for that they needed Delilah. She was beautiful, dangerous, cunning. She lived in the valley of Sorek, where temptation flowed like wine. The Philistine rulers came to her with an offer. Lure Samson into revealing the secret of his strength. Find out how we can subdue him. Each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver, a fortune, a king's ransom, and Delilah. She did not refuse. That evening she welcomed Samson into her arms. Her voice was soft, her touch gentle. She ran her fingers through his thick, dark hair and whispered,
"Tell me, my love, what makes you so strong? How can you be bound?"
Samson smiled. He saw her game, but he played along.
"If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have never been dried, I will become as weak as any other man."
Delilah's eyes gleamed. That night, while Samson slept, she summoned the Philistine rulers. They brought the bowstrings, strong and fresh. She tied Samson's arms, fastening them tight. Then with a scream, she called out,
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
Samson awoke, his muscles tensed, and the bowstring snapped apart like thread. The Philistines retreated in fear. Delilah sighed in frustration, but she was not finished. The game continued. Delilah pressed Samson again and again. Her words, soft as silk, coiled around him like a serpent.
You mocked me. You lied to me. If you truly love me, tell me the secret of your strength.
Samson smirked.
If I am tied with new ropes that have never been used, I will become weak.
That night, Delilah bound him in new ropes. Again, she cried out,
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
and again he broke free as if the ropes were nothing. Her frustration turned to anger.
How can you say you love me when you won't confide in me?
Day after day she pressed him. Night after night she whispered, pleaded, wept, until at last he could resist no more. Samson, weary and weak from her constant torment, spoke the truth, the words that would seal his fate.
No razor has ever touched my head. From birth I've been a Nazirite, set apart for Yah. If my hair is shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become as weak as any other man.
Delilah's lips curled into a slow, triumphant smile. She had won. That night, as Samson lay sleeping in her lap, she ran her fingers through his long, thick locks. She called for a man. A blade gleamed in the dim light. One lock fell, then another, until at last the line was shorn. The mighty Samson was no more.
Samson, the Philistines are upon you.
He awoke, as he had before. He moved to rise, but his strength was gone. His arms felt weak. His legs trembled beneath him. He did not know that Yahuwah had left him. The Philistines seized him, overpowering him with ease. They gouged out his eyes. Darkness, pain. The lion had been caged. They bound him in bronze shackles and dragged him to Gaza, the very city whose gates he had once carried away. But now there would be no escape. The mighty had fallen. Blind, broken, and bound, Samson was led to Gaza. No longer a warrior, no longer feared, he was a slave. The Philistines laughed as they forced him to grind grain in the prison, like a beast of burden. The women mocked him. The children threw stones. The warriors jeered. But Samson endured, because deep inside he felt something growing. Not his hope, not his pride, his hair. One day, the Philistines held a great festival in honor of their false god, Dagon. The temple was filled with thousands of nobles, rulers, and warriors. They gathered to celebrate their victory over Samson.
Dagon has delivered our enemy into our hands.
They wanted a show. They wanted to mock Samson one last time. Bring out the blind fool. Let him entertain us. Samson was led to the temple. They laughed. They spit at him. They made him dance like a fool. But Samson was listening. He heard the stone pillars around him. He felt the weight of the temple. He heard the laughter of his enemies. His heart burned with one final prayer. He whispered to the young servant beside him,
Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so I may lean against them.
The boy hesitated, then obeyed. Samson placed his hands on the two central pillars, and he prayed, Yahuwah, remember me, strengthen me just once more. Let me die with the Philistines. He pushed, the pillars cracked, the walls shuddered, the ceiling split apart, the temple collapsed, the Philistine lords screamed, the warriors tried to flee, the false priests clutched their idols in vain, but it was too late. The temple of Dagon fell. Samson died that day, but in his final act he killed more Philistines than he had in his entire life. His brothers took his body and buried him in the land of Israel. And thus ended the story of Samson, the Lion of Israel. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our latest videos. Thank you for watching.